We're bringing in James Palmer from the NFL Network, and James is my co-host also on the NFL Report, which, like the Rich Eisen Show, JP, you can watch on Roku and other fast channels and streaming apps. JP, we see you are in your car. You're not being driven, so much props to that.
No.
We're not like Rich. We're not sitting in the back seat. So you just landed back home in Denver because you were at the Kansas City Broncos game last night. And we've been sitting here talking ad nauseum about the Broncos and how they're struggling and Russell Wilson. But let's go to the Chiefs right now, JP.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes throws for 300 yards last night. They have all these great statistical numbers except for on the scoreboard where only they have 19 points. And it still does not seem, even though the Chiefs are 5-1, that they have hit their stride offensively. What's going on that side of the ball?
Yeah, Steve, it's funny. I talked to Chris Jones on the field after the game, and it was funny. Our conversation started with so many years, Chris, right? Your defense has kind of had this slow start, and then Steve Spagnuolo gets them better as the season goes on. And what are they doing? They're playing their best football by the end of the season and into the postseason. It's almost flipped this year. Like the offense is trying to find their footing in this first quarter of the season, and the defense has come out screaming hot. And we can talk about the defense, but talking to people pregame and being on that sideline because of our show, Steve, because of being on the Insider show that's also on the network, I believe Mike Garafolo and I arrived to the sideline sometime around 10:30 in the morning for this Thursday night game. So I had plenty of time to talk to people on the sideline, right? And so talking to people, it was essentially this. It's not like Patrick Mahomes trusts everybody out there outside of Travis Kelce. Actually, Justin Watson was a name that I kept being told is the other guy he trusted quite a bit. And then he has a dislocated elbow in this game. He's going to be out a few weeks, to my understanding, maybe more. We'll see how the scans go. But that's why we're seeing him run more. See, that's what I was told repeatedly is he's kind of looking at it going, I don't know if I want to pull the trigger. I can get these 8 yards. I can get these 10 yards, keep moving the football, because it's not entirely sure he trusts what Rashee Rice is doing or what Sky Moore is doing. And, that's why you're seeing him running the football at a greater clip than he ever has in his career, because he's taking that in some of these instances as opposed to maybe taking a chance on some of these throws that you've seen him do. And he's protecting the football in a sense as he's learning with these guys. But the part that stands out to me the most is I'm told he's been brilliant with them Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in the meeting room, working on things, telling him how he wants certain things. 2 routes by Rashee Rice recently stood out to him as, okay, we're getting somewhere. And so this is a work in progress with it. But part of it, I'm told, is a trust factor that's not entirely there yet. And that's why we're seeing him run a little bit more.
Well, I mean, it's interesting when you think about, some of the greats, Tom Brady, when they changed receivers, not having necessarily a trust factor. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers, not necessarily having a trust factor. At some point, though, James, when you get to the end of the season, that trust factor has got to develop. So, again, it may be a work in progress, but they're still getting dubs. Yeah. But what is keeping them in games is this defense. So you mentioned this defense typically starts peaking at about week 12, 13. They've been doing it from the outset. What is working on that side of the ball that Steve Spagnuolo has helped drum up?
I think they're deep, Steve. I mean, I mentioned Chris Jones. He told me this is the most complete defense he's been a part of in Kansas City from, every position that you look at on the field. They have 2 really good corners in Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed.
They do.
They have 3 different safeties that they play. Brian Cook can play down and in the box, and Justin Reed can do a variety of things. Obviously, they're still looking for more from a couple of their young edge guys. That's why, I don't know, maybe a new available edge rusher.
Talk about it. Go ahead and drop that news in.
Been there before. I'm not sure if when Frank Clark arrives in Kansas City, Chris did yell it to me when he was running off the field. He's like, Chris will be here Monday. He doesn't have a say in the front office, but obviously he wants his running mate back there in Kansas City. So the part that stands out to me the most, and talking to front office people in Kansas City, is these little moves, Steve, right? We talk so much about big free agent acquisitions, that first wave of free agency, when everybody's going, oh, this guy's signing for this. They went out and got Drew Tranquill, and they go out and get Mike Edwards. And these are 2 sleepy, quiet signings that have done wonders for this defense. When Nick Bolton missed a stretch, and there's a lot on this middle linebacker in Steve Spagnuolo's defense. You know that. That position has a lot on its plate. For Tranquill to just come in and just own it, play it, they're trying to find ways to put him on the field because he's been playing so well. That's the problem they have on defense. They have some guys they'd like to get on the field, and they can't get them enough snaps. They're deep. They can get after the quarterback, and they can cover.
Yeah, I mean, that's an absolute good problem to have, as the cliche goes, when you have so many talented players and to have them on defense where injuries are going to show up. But I like what you said about Drew Tranquill, because when he was with the Chargers, he was a tackling machine.
Yeah.
I mean, I was kind of surprised that they let him go, but they went out and got Kendrick, so he became, somebody who could be replaced. But adding him, this is such a great Brett Veach, Andy Reid move to kind of add a player to a position of strength. Because like you said, Nick Bolton, he's one of the best inside linebackers in the NFL, but to add a Tranquill to play alongside him or to replace him, just a deft move right there. So real quick, we talked about the Chiefs. Let's go over to the Broncos. We saw their defense actually play a good game last night, but offensively, James, I mean, they were just stuck in the mud. What's happening there?
I'm not sure how long you're having me on, Steve. So I don't know if that's really sure where we can start and where we can finish.
Let's go to quarterback, because Russell Wilson had played, for the most part, decent football leading up to this game, even though I think that bar has been lowered for him based on what he was in Seattle. When we talk about decent football, he did not play well last night.
No, he did not. And he's actually, his loss of a step, I think it's a microcosm of the entire team on really both sides of the ball. I think they lack team speed on defense. I think they lack team speed on offense as well. And you've seen them kind of searching for it, because where they're getting their explosive plays, it's the two rookies, in all honesty. Jaleel McLaughlin out of the backfield, running the football, and Marvin Mims, the rookie wide receiver. Those are their two explosive players. Outside of that, you're not seeing a whole lot of speed. They wanted Greg Dulcich to be a big part of this offense, play that joker role that they assigned him to, that you've seen a variety of players have in New Orleans over the years. Just can't stay healthy.
Right.
Came back off of IR for this game from the hamstring. Gets a hamstring injury again in this game. The receivers have not been able to find separation, although Cortland Sutton had a phenomenal catch in the end zone for the touchdown. It's been difficult to move the football because the offensive line as well has not been able to really pass protect. And you thought they'd hang their head on running the football, but they've been oftentimes just abandoning the run entirely. They did that against the Jets a week ago in the second half. They barely ran the football. And this is where we thought a great defense, running the football, running play action would be all the things that would help out Russell Wilson, and we'd see him play better than we did a year ago. We are seeing him as a whole playing better than he did a year ago, because I don't know if you can get much worse than the way he played last year. So he is better in a sense, but the offense in its entirety has just been so sluggish. And to me, the biggest thing that stands out is when they have had success, Steve, it's been in the first half. Look at the first half splits for Russell Wilson compared to the second half. He's been phenomenal, coming out with the script and Sean Payton's script, and they're rolling. But when they have to adjust, and in my opinion, Russ has to start reading all the adjustments himself, and this coaching staff has to adjust, that's where they've struggled just mightily. This was a really good defense that throws a variety of things at you, and they just kind of looked lost on that side of the ball with what Spags was throwing at them.
JP, we're going to go a little bit to the right here, but you talk about the Broncos' explosive players, and one of those was supposed to be Jeudy. And we saw pregame our colleague, Steve Smith, who we love, him and Jeudy had an exchange, and you were there. You were there,
favorite person,
right?
Yeah.
You were there for all of it. And look, I think Steve showed initially, for those who didn't know about it, pregame, Steve Smith tried to approach Jeudy and apologized to him for saying some critical remarks they said about Jeudy on his Cut to It podcast, to which Jeudy responded with some profanity and some talk that hit Steve. It was personal, and so Steve went on air and said, "Look, Jeudy's a tier 3 wide receiver. He's kind of just a guy." But you being there, because Steve also came back and said he doesn't want to sit there and pile on and talk about this. He doesn't want to have black on black crime, so to speak, a black analyst talking about a black player. But you being there and seeing this whole atmosphere, what about the way that went down, the way that was handled, and kind of where everything got buttoned up?
See, I was standing with Steve on the sideline when the whole thing went down. I mean, I heard everything that Jerry said to him, that Steve wanted to approach him. I talked to Jerry in the locker room afterwards, asking him, if he's going to talk to Steve. And, I mean, Jerry did tell me in the locker room, he said, how was I supposed to know he was going to apologize to me? I mean, he was referring to what he's read and seen from Steve Smith and the comments about his play. I'll say this, Jerry Jeudy reads a lot of that stuff in social media. So he sees it and he hears it. And so I more or less said, well, maybe, you didn't give him a chance to say it. But anyway, what ended up happening was, obviously, Steve can get hot. What we do know is this happens every place I've been with Steve, where he interacts with every receiver. I mean, receivers just flock to him. They just come over and he talks to them. I mean, hell, I remember being at Ohio State's Pro Day with him, and we were talking to Jackson Smith and Jigba, and man, was he being honest with Jackson about what he has heard about him and things he wanted him to correct because he wants him to be a good receiver.
And he's got the credibility.
I don't think Steve, he has all the credibility in the world. And the way he played the game, with the toughness of the way he played the game, and his approach and mentality to the game, he does this with every receiver. Now, it's whether the receiver wants to take the criticism or not. Because I would say Steve is very constructive with his criticism. He doesn't go and bash these guys. He honestly wants all of them to succeed. He wants every receiver to succeed. Yep. And so when I hear him have these conversations that are very frank and they're very private, honestly, and I don't talk about what I hear as a fly on the wall next to him in a lot of these, and they're always ending with, I got you. Like, come on, you can do this. Like, that's usually the way they end. So that's probably and talking with Steve on the sideline, that's where that conversation was going to go on the sideline if it ever was going to happen. And it ended up not happening. And then, it kind of escalated when Jerry was dancing and I was recording it for the Twitters or the X's out there. And he was doing it right behind our live shot with a purpose. So it got a little weird, honestly, because it lasted for a very long time. But it was something that you didn't expect pregame, especially with someone that, might be headed out of Denver as a weird showcase if somebody could be available to the rest of the league on a Thursday night.
Yeah, and Jerry Jeudy ended that game with 3 catches and 14 yards. 14. So for anything, Steve was saying, it played out right there. Look, I know Steve, and I know I've known him since he was a player, covered him back in the day, and I know how much he is really about finding inner peace, being better as a human being. I think at some point they'll have a conversation. It'll be private. Hopefully.
I guarantee they will.
Yeah, and hopefully it stays private, and those two can become better men because of it. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned for everybody there. And again, I'm sure they'll have that conversation. Last thing, JP, before we get out of here, our show, the NFL Report. How much do you have to carry me? Like these guys in studio are carrying me today to get through Rich's show.
Guys, what's it like? I mean, he's polite and all, and he's nice. It's heavy lifting sometimes when you tell him certain things that you want to say and then he snatches them and steals them from you.
All the time.
And uses them before you can say them.
Right. That's my move.
It's the worst. No, this show has been an absolute blast to do with Steve so far. I mean, getting a chance to just talk ball. And I was talking to some of the coaches on the Chiefs staff who were like, we've been listening to this podcast. Like it's a smart, football show because they've listened to the audio version and obviously it's on Roku and everything else and streaming. It's Leslie Frazier the other day, Steve, right? Yesterday, breaking down 21 personnel and how the Dolphins and Niners use it at a rate that nobody else does is fascinating for, I think, any football fan. So that's essentially what we're getting at. And it's been a really, really good time. You're heavy. Yeah. You're lighter than your playing days, but it's a treat, man.
And I would tell you this, and doing the show with James, look, we've been friends for a while. It's just so great working with somebody who I respect and appreciate and have such an affinity for. And, someone who does so much of the heavy lifting for, we can't say a network anymore. We're kind of a network / channel /
if you will,
streaming app / podcast. But there's so much heavy lifting traveling across the country with his beautiful, he's got a beautiful wife, Meg, wonderful son, Nick's. There at Denver. It just, my respect for him just as a human being and top of a great journalist, top shelf. All right, JP, go ahead and drive home to that beautiful family. Again, guys, he's driving.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing.
No,
James,
I'm not driving.
James, also real quick, with Tom Pelissaro's coming up next. Who's got better hair, be honest, you or Tom?
Oh, my God.
Is it a competition?
Really? Oh, life is a competition.
James, you have to understand, this is something we talk about all the time.
Who won last night? Who won last night? My hometown Philadelphia Phillies or the Atlanta Braves?
There we go. The Phillies. Phillies reference. There it is.
Ooh, Phillies.
Got to get the old man a ring before he retires.
They're the hot team. They're going to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
All right, JP.
Yep. Be well, brother.
Appreciate you, man.
All right, guys. Take it easy.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.